name is Rahan Amir. I've been with AWS for over 3.5 years now, mainly working with justice and public safety customers here based in Canberra in Australia. And I am part of the analytics technical field community, mainly working with analytics services such as QuickSight. And the premise of what I do day in, day out is providing pre-sales assistance to our customers, to my customers, in setting up services which are for customers who have got a protected workload that they want to host in AWS Cloud. So the topic I've chosen is securing your QuickSight account for public sector. And this is something I've sort of come across that a lot lately. And what I try to do is to create what I've done in this presentation is to create a list of best practices that I'll share with you for what our customers are doing, not just for QuickSight, for other services such as QuickSight. So we'll kick off. The agenda for today is we're just going to have a quick look at what is Amazon QuickSight. So most of you might know this, but it's just going to be a refresher on what is it. What is the AWS shared responsibility model? So we've all come across this a lot. So we'll just briefly touch upon that and understand what, where the responsibilities lie in terms of making sure that our accounts are secure. So, on this side of the fence, what is AWS responsible for? And on the other side of the fence, what you as a customer is responsible for, and making sure that your services are secure and compliant as well. So what we cover is, as I kind of mentioned before, security best practices, but looking at it from the dimensions, four kind of lenses. One is infrastructure security, the other is data protection, access management, and compliance. Okay, so let's just jump into what is Amazon QuickSight. So Amazon QuickSight is a cloud-native unified business intelligence service, which is basically providing you for creating dashboards and visualizations for all of your analytical needs. QuickSight is a managed service, so it connects to various data sources such as databases, S3, SaaS applications such as Salesforce to create visualizations and dashboards. So it's got its own in-memory calculation engine, which is called SPICE. So it's SPICE stands for Super Fast Parallel In-Memory Calculation Engine. There is a lot of QuickSight is heavy on the use of Gen AI capabilities as well. So you can ask it questions in natural language query, as well as you can ask QuickSight to create those visualizations for you. So build with Q is what it's called, and it's a managed service. So you pay for pay per session pricing model. So it's quite cost effective in that sense. Okay, so AWS shared responsibility model. What is AWS shared responsibility model? So I think a lot of people are aware of this, but what we say is that customers are responsible for security in the cloud, whereas we at AWS are responsible for security of the cloud. And needless to say, that doesn't mean that we will not help you with giving you the tools and services that you'll require to secure your services that you build or applications that you build on AWS. So we'll look at all of those in from the point of view of providing guidance. And showing you how it's done, but what in terms of securing security in the cloud, what customers are responsible for is making sure that the updates and patches are applied. So this is for services that are not managed. Then there's software installation and configuration, so that's your responsibility. firewall security, as well as the data encryption, data management encryption, and creating users and roles for you to be able to publish those applications and for the users to be authenticated and authorized to access those applications. What we are responsible for is the hardware, software, networking facilities, so protecting the infrastructure that you build your services on, and how we provide you that comfort that those services that those services that you're building on the infrastructure that we give you is secure is by way of the accreditation that we do through third parties such as ISO and HIPAA and IRAP and all of those ones that are available on our website by looking at Artifact as one of the services that you can look at those reports. So what we start off with is how do you secure your infrastructure and what are the best practices in terms of how you manage it. So on the right-hand side over here, what we're showing is an architecture of a service that is managed, such as QuickSight. So you're on the left-hand side, you've got your corporate network, and you may have a direct connect or a VPN connect into the customer VPC. So this might be part of your landing zone, which is AWS organizations that allow you to centrally manage all of your accounts. And then QuickSight is on the far right end of this diagram. So out of the box, when you enable QuickSight, QuickSight's a managed service, as I mentioned, it runs on its own dedicated EC2 instance, and it's spun up in a service account, right? So the way that you connect to it then is via the internet. So when you are on your corporate network, you go all the way out to the internet to access QuickSight. And obviously for federal customers, some of the accounts that they build and the the tenancy that have been provisioned, I've seen that they don't have internet access to those tenancies. So how do we make sure that their access is not via the internet, and what are the things that they'll have to do? So a couple of things over here. One is VPC connections, which means that you'd have to create a connection from your QuickSight account, and I'll show you that in a minute. For QuickSight to come into your VPC, into your private subnets, and connect into services such as RDS. So if I'm creating a data set which lives in an RDS instance within my private subnet, how do I connect to it? And so VPC connection is one of the ways of connecting in using the ENIs, which is the elastic network interfaces, and that it sort of uses as an anchor into your subnet, and your subnet then assigns it a private IP address. So that's how you sort of connect into your subnet as part of your VPC, which is part of your VPC, and then so that's the QuickSight coming into your private subnet. How do you access that service, which is QuickSight website, instead of going out to the internet? How do you connect it from your corporate network via your your VPN or direct connect into your AWS tenancy? And so for that you use VPC endpoints, which is basically an interface endpoint that you connect your QuickSight website into, and create some Route 53 entries that allows you to route your traffic internally from your corporate network into the QuickSight website server. So we'll look at those in a bit more detail as part of the demo that I've got. So as part of setting up VPC endpoints, what you do is you go into your AWS console, and this is where you go into the landing page. I'll go over here and go into the landing page and create go into the VPC service. And on the left-hand side pane of the VPC dashboard, you create endpoints. And I'm sure many of you would have done this in your account. And I've already got the endpoint created. But what I want to show you is quickly run through the creation And the reason why I want to do that is to be able to show you the things that you can implement within the endpoint as way of creating that endpoint, such as your security policies, so your security groups, your resource policies, as well as your NACLs that controls access to your QuickSight website server from within your customer VPC. So I'll run through the wizard. I might not complete that, but I'll show you what are the things that you can set up over here. So I'm just going to say demo endpoint. Which service I want QuickSight. And I want to connect to the QuickSight website server. So what I'm doing over here now is I'm connecting from my customer VPC, which is this one, into a service VPC where the QuickSight website server lives. And how I'm connecting that is through an interface endpoint. This is where my QuickSight, sorry, this is my customer VPC, and I have a couple of availability zones within that VPC. So I'll select both of them, and then I'll choose the private subnet. So there's a couple of subnets. There's 2 public subnets, 2 private subnets. And usually in Europe, you'd only have private subnets. Regardless of that, you choose your subnets that you want to connect into, and then the security group. Now, the security group is a firewall. Think of that as a firewall that allows the traffic to be sent on those ports that you specify within the security group. So over here, I've already created that security group. So I'll choose the VPC endpoint security group. And over here, this is where you would create a policy. I'll show you what policy I've created within the interface endpoint that I've previously created. But this is where you define which AWS accounts are able to access the QuickSight website. And so instead of create, I'll cancel that. I'll go into the ones that I've created earlier. And over here, I can see that it's created the ENIs, as I was talking about, the network interface endpoints in 2 subnets. So these 2 subnets, I'll cancel that. Sorry. So I'm in the Sydney region, and I'm in the AP Southeast 2. And so the availability zones are 2A and 2B, and it assigns local IP addresses from that subnet range. And this is the security group that I was talking about. So all I need is access on HTTPS, because QuickSight's available on HTTPS. When I'm connecting from my VPC into QuickSight, I need a secure encrypted connection to the website. So I will use a security group that allows me to do that. So once I've done that, I then need to create a Route 53 hosted zone. So I've pre-created the hosted zone. So the hosted zone is going to be a DNS name of my QuickSight website. If I don't do that, then the name that it creates is sort of, backwards in terms of how it's created. So I will create the website name as quicksite.aws.amazon.com, which is how you access it on the internet, right? So a private hosted zone is only for an internal VPC. And so if I click on this, I will create a alias record. So I go in here, I say I want an alias record pointing to a VPC endpoint. I'm in the Sydney region. This is my interface endpoint that I've created earlier. And I don't want to evaluate the health of the target, and I'll create that record. So once I've got that, what I want to show you now is this is one of the EC2 instance that I've spun up in a private subnet within my VPC. Okay, and so now that my Route 53 alias record's created, I've got an interface endpoint. Technically, when I'm pinging when I'm trying to connect into QuickSight.aws or Amazon.com, I should be getting a response, a resolution to a private IP address, which is 10.0. And this is part of my VPC subnet that I've created. And I should be able to access the dashboard. So I'll just go in here, and so I can access it from within my internal VPC, which has got a couple of subnets, both private subnets, and have no internet access. So as you can see, it's instead of going out to the internet, I'm actually just going to the private, using the private IP addresses. I'm using the backbone of the AWS, and connecting into the QuickSight web server. I will now, so that's that VPC endpoint. What I want to show you next is the VPC connections. So I'm logged in as an admin over here. So as you can see, my username is admin. I will click on Manage QuickSight and create a VPC connection. So what that is now I'm on the QuickSight website server, and I want to connect into resources that are in my customer VPC. So imagine if I had created an RDS database in one of the private subnets, how do I connect to it? So one of the ways of connecting to it is obviously if the RDS has got a public endpoint that it exposes to the internet, but for a customer who's got highly sensitive information and doesn't want to expose it to the internet, then I would have to have a way of connecting it through the backbone again, coming into a private subnet and connecting to that RDS. So I've created some VPC connections, but I'll show you how it's done. So how it does it is I'll just go demo VPC. It again creates those elastic network interface or endpoints within those subnets. So I know my QuickSight subnet is QuickSight or customer VPC is this one here. I'm going to choose a service role, and then the private subnets that I need to hook this into, and a security group. Now the security group is how you control what ports are allowed to connect from the QuickSight's website server, which lives in a service account, into a customer VPC. So if I'm connecting to imagine if it's a MySQL RDS database, the port that I need is a 3306, right? And I need to have a security group that has allowed that port as part of allowing website to connect into RDS. So I've pre-created that, and then I'll just add that VPC connection over here. As I said, I've previously created that. It takes a little bit of time to become available. So in the interest of time, I already created it, but just wanted to show you how once it's created, how it kind of looks. So now that these VPC connections set up and the endpoints are set up for communication from the VPC into the service account, if I go back into QuickSight as an admin user again, I can connect into data sets that or database or tables that live in that RDS instance, and it's just as simple as choosing which data set I want to connect into. In this case, it's MySQL, and then you basically say, I don't want to have a public network connection to my database. I want to use the VPC connections, and choose whichever one you have got for that VPC where your database lives, and specify the port number, the name, the username and password, and validate the connection. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now after we've created the endpoints and the VPC connection. So that's your infrastructure security. What we're saying is that we should be connecting to the data sources in VPC via Amazon VPC, so a VPC to VPC connection, which ensures that the data remains within the Amazon network and allows secure database access without public internet exposure to secure and isolate traffic between resources. Now that we've secured the connection to the QuickSight website server, how do we protect that data? How do we make sure that the data in Amazon QuickSight is secure? And so what it offers is a couple of things. It's got encryption of data at rest and as well as in transit. So QuickSight encrypts data at rest using KMS. It also allows you to use your customer managed keys as well for not only the data that lives in the Spice engine, which is your in-memory data store, but also the metadata that's associated with that data store, with the data stored in QuickSight. So that's that's an added sort of encryption on top of not only just the data, the metadata is encrypted as well. In transit using TLS 1.0 and above between AWS services and QuickSight clients as it kind of moves across the network. Just be mindful that the connections between VPC, between that service VPC that I was showing to you earlier and your customer VPC, that connection is already encrypted, right? So any traffic that moves between resources between VPCs is already encrypted. There's a couple of things to remember here. Make sure that you enable encryption for all compatible data sources. Use customer managed keys or KMS keys for Spice dataset, and that's only available in an enterprise edition of QuickSight. Just a couple of other things to remember is regularly rotate encryption keys and review access policies. Just make sure that permissions are given in such a way that certainly to those service accounts that need access to encrypt or decrypt the data, as well as integrate. KMS as well as QuickSight is integrated deeply into CloudTrail. So just monitor the activities of what those service accounts are doing, just to catch the suspicious activities that are happening in your account. The next one is access management. QuickSight is kind of integrated into identity and access management, so AWS IAM, which allows you to have it integrated into your own Active Directory. So it supports integration with AWS directory services. So you can build it on top of AWS, or you connect it into your own Active Directory within your on-premises network. By virtue of that, you can have seamless identity management and single sign-on. It allows you to have MFA on those accesses as well, and simplifies user and group management within organizations. So what we typically recommend is that, and this is just a better best practice, is to create those groups and align them to the level of permissions that you can get within QuickSight. So out of the box, you've got 3 different kind of roles: admin, author, and reader. So reader has got the least privileges, admin's got the most, and author is kind of in the middle. So when you create those groups within Active Directory, make sure that you align it and map it to those roles that are available in QuickSight. But you can create custom permissions as well, which allows you to have granular control as well. Again, what we're kind of saying is that apply the principle of least privilege, ensure that the users who need access to the service is only given access, and then QuickSight also supports fine-grained access control policies and rules. So what I'm going to show over here is row level and column level security, which is one of the features that's available within QuickSight. Just want to see if I'm still logged in as an administrator. So I go back into QuickSight and go into datasets. So over here, there's 4 datasets over here which come out of the box. And then these are some of the data sets that I've created myself. There are two different kinds of data sets over here. One is a SPICE. So this is an in-memory data store. And then there's a direct query. And this is the data store that's living on an RDS. So the table that's hosted on an RDS, and I'm connecting it via those VPC connections that I've created. And how you create the row level security and the column level security is so you're going into those data sets and you then create, it's taking its time, and you basically create those data sets based on the roles. So what it allows you to do is to have a single dashboard, but based on the users who are logging in to the dashboard would have access to be able to see what data is relevant to them and not been able to see what's then not been given permissions to be able to see. So how this works is it's a data set. Again, it's a file. It's a CSV file, which I'll show you over here. Data sets. So it's a CSV file, which has got a couple of columns, a group name, and a segment. So the group name is the name of all the Active Directory groups. So I've connected QuickSight to an Active Directory, and I've created a couple of groups, readers and admins. And then what I've said over here is that the readers should only have access to the SMB segment, which is a field within my data set, whereas admins can see all. So if I don't specify any value in this row over here, that means that they've got full access. All right. So if I go back into data sets and I open up my data set and I want to enable row level security, is I basically just say which CSV file has that defined within it. So I choose that, and then I say grant access to dataset based on what permissions I've defined, and the group name has to match. All right. So I then apply it to the dataset, and so if I go back here to my dashboard, which has got see how it's got a padlock, but I go into a dashboard, and this is the dashboard that I created earlier. And as an admin, I can see all of the data for all of these 4 segments. But if I log out and log in as a reader, which is part of a QuickSight readers group, and look at that dashboard again that has been published to me as a reader, I can only see SMB. All right. So this is row level security in play. I'll go back into admin. I'll quickly show you the column level security as well, just to show you how it's done. Going back into the data sets. So this one over here has got column level security as just column level security enabled on it. So if I go and add it, I basically, so these are all the columns that I've got in my data set, and I could basically change that to say, okay, well, I want these 2 columns only to be visible to admins, not to everyone. And so when they see the data set, they'll say the column will appear, but all the values will be not authorized. So that's how you set up column level security within QuickSight. Okay, so the next one is compliance. So we've had a look at infrastructure security, data access management, and compliance. So compliance is the last and but not the least. So in terms of compliance, there's a couple of tools that are available that you might be using right now. One of them is AWS config, where you define those rules, and then your service, which is config, goes and assesses it against the rules that you've defined. So I'll give you an example. So if you've got an EC2 instance that's running in your tenancy, and you have got a rule that says that any EBS volumes that are attached to EC2 instances will need to be encrypted. And if it's not, then it will create a red flag for you. So AWS config is a service that assesses or that reviews your resource configuration and make sure that it complies with the practices and the regulations that you as a business complies with. In your case, is ISM controls, etc. And make sure that it flags it and displays it. And so where it displays it, in Security Hub, which is basically a central dashboard where you can log in and check the compliance of your rules that you've defined. There's a couple of other things that are worth mentioning. Make sure that you integrate your QuickSight with CloudTrail, and make sure that you create a trail, which means when you create a trail, it basically what it does, it picks up all these events that are matched with the service name, which is QuickSight, and pushes it into an S3 bucket, right? And those events then can be sucked into your SIEM. So if you're using a SIEM on-prem, then you could push those logs in there. But CloudTrail will provide actions for all API calls that are made and will record it. By using CloudTrail, you basically are tracking the dashboard creation, data query, deletion, data source access, and everything else. It then aids in auditing, make sure that we're tracking user activities and identifying unauthorized actions. And then all of that's to comply with various industry standards such as RF and ISO, as well as HIPAA. The last slide that I want to show is for us to then understand where we talked about the shared responsibility model. We can kind of bring in QuickSight into the perspective and look at what is in terms of making sure that the service is secure. What is our responsibility, right? So QuickSight is a software as a service, right? So incident response and backup is a shared responsibility. So you're responsible for that as well as us. In terms of the technical, responsibilities, making sure the data is encrypted, that's on us. Identity access management, which is authentication and authorization, it's a shared responsibility. AWS is responsible for making sure that the service that it provides by way of IAM, the roles that it creates. So all these things will provide you with the ability to then hook in your Active Directory into IAM and manage those user accesses. And then anything underneath that, the application, the platform, virtualization, physical host, and networking is all on us to make sure that it's reliable, secure, and we provide that resilience. All of those services stay within that region, which is Sydney in our case, as well as Melbourne. So we take care of that.